I mentioned that Billy Joe Cain is coming. We connected on LinkedIn about Gamicon, but it just happened a few weeks ago. We were going to be up in Austin, so Jonathan and Billy Joe met for coffee. And when Jonathan got back, it takes a lot to get him really excited about a concept or an idea. You know, we've been around the block so many times that. But he came, he said, we've got to make room for this in the Gamicon schedule. I said, well, you're managing the schedule. Let's find a place to do it. So we're going to, it might be a little bit emotional for some of us, but I also think that it's a great exploration of how immersive VR can be designed with precise learning objectives in mind. And Billy Joe works specifically in the area of targeting the psychological manipulation that's involved in human trafficking. So I'll let him share. I'll come back with some ideas at the end also, but this learning really does embody that principle that it will resonate with the learner who it's targeted for, which in this particular design is for younger populations. So Billy Joe, welcome to the platform. We are delighted to have you here. I'll let you take the stage, share your slides. We'll be right here to support you. Just holler out if you need some help. And you're muted right now. Sorry, the system does that.
Oh, that's fine. Oh, that was me. I probably did that on purpose. Who knows what kind of weird noises I'll make over here. I really appreciate being involved. I appreciate the time that I got to spend with Jonathan and share the VR with him and our experience. But I'm going to try to jump right in and leave room at the end for QA if I can get done in time. Who knows how fast I'm going to get through this. This conference has been amazing. I've popped in over the last 48 hours, seeing what's been going on. This is just a marathon, and congratulations for getting all the way to the end. I know you guys are ready for the after party. So I'm going to give you guys the backstory on how I came to laser focus our VR experience on our learning objectives, because really every step of the way taught me the why for everything. Every part of it was important so that I eventually got to the whole of it. And I think the journey is really interesting and important. Maybe it'll inspire you to follow the leads of your journeys, you know, while you're trying to look at your product and see where they take you. I really had no idea where things were going to take me. So I'm going to follow the needs of our students in the future, and we're going to see where that takes us. And feel free to visit our website. It looks like that. It's called reefcares.org. Bookmark it for later. There's tons of answers and videos there. I think you guys are liking it. Now I'm going to click the present button, and I'm going to see. So I'm the president of Radical Empathy Education Foundation, which we shorten to reefcares.org. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Actually, you know, I had some notes on the previous page, so I don't want to be silly. I want to make sure I get everything. So yeah, yep, I got all that stuff. I made sure to tell you about the website. Got to make sure I remember everything. So I'm Billy Joe Cain. I've been playing video games since they existed, with Pong in the early 70s. My dad used to take me to bars and restaurants and everything, so I would be sitting on the counters and playing all kinds of weird games back in the day. And I've always enjoyed the way that video games can make big feelings happen. I always enjoyed these big feelings I got from video games, and in 1992, I actually got a job making video games at Origin Systems, which we were purchased by Electronic Arts. We did role-playing games and fantasy games and space flight games and things like that, and I haven't stopped making games ever since. I've made games on just about every video game system and tried to use the special features of each one to their fullest. Games can actually transport you anywhere at any time. They can put you in unbelievable situations you could never imagine, and when that game is over, you're right back where you started, safe in your house, or at the arcade, or at your university, or at your job, or just standing in the subway on your phone. So we at Radical Empathy have been trying to utilize this feeling of transporting you to another realm to create the most immersive training program that has ever existed. Following up with university studies that prove clearly that the retention of that otherworldly experience, the ability to create big feelings and put you in other places, the way we can reach into the customer, the careful use of these powerful training tools are the magic behind the emotional and empathetic growth we see every day. It is an honor and privilege to witness the dramatic understanding that happens right in front of us. We get feedback from our users, from our trainers every day, and they are absolutely blown away by this experience. And I want to teach you guys how we came to do this thing. But I want to talk a little bit about safety. We talk about games being safe. So I need to warn you that for the remainder of this talk, we're going to be talking about a very important, a very emotionally difficult topic of human trafficking. The topic itself covers a wide range of potentially triggering issues. I don't even need to list them, I don't think, at this point. But if you get to a point where you realize you've heard enough, just excuse yourself and come back at 5 o'clock, or come back in 53 minutes to hear the next show. But it's really important to practice self-care and be aware of your own limitations. If you want to learn more about human trafficking, or if you're looking for resources, go to reefcares.org. We have free resources up there that will help you. So enough about that. A little bit about me and why I started on this journey. I always wanted to make a difference using video games to help address social issues. I could never have imagined that I'd be using video games and video game technology to educate people about human trafficking. And who would have guessed that this would be because of something that happened to my kids? That was not expected in the slightest, and I realized that I had a total lack of understanding of this topic and how to educate other people about it, especially my children, and I realized that was a problem. So while I was working on a video game in the early 2010s, I found out that my children were being groomed by my boss, who was a friend, who also turned out to be a registered sex predator. So anybody out there that thinks their kids are safe on a cell phone, let me tell you what happened to me. This guy reached into my home through my old-fashioned landline, one phone call at a time. He would talk to the kids before I would talk to him. Sometimes they would answer because they knew him. He had been kind of part of our family. So he kind of snuck into our lives. No social media was necessary for this guy. This guy didn't pull up in a white panel van and steal my kids. He snuck in through the phone. So I really wanted to figure out what is going to be the best way I could teach other people how to avoid this, how to prevent this from happening in their lives. So from the children to the parents. So I looked into the topic, and I really just couldn't find a lot of resources that were really much better than a book. And I didn't know which one was the best. I learned through interactive experiences, and I couldn't find anything that made any sense to me. My wife and I did what we could to educate ourselves and our family, but it really wasn't enough, and it really bothered me and stuck with me for years. Years later, I just finished a big project and was really trying to figure out what I was going to do with my career. I just started working in virtual reality, and seeing that technology being at a point where it was going to be able to be adopted by the masses, and there were going to be inexpensive headsets out there, I realized that this was something that needed to be looked into. Coincidentally, at the same time, 2016, I was really interested in what was going on in Standing Rock, North Dakota. I went there to find out just how our indigenous peoples were being mistreated by the oil companies and our government. While I was there, I listened to tribal leaders from many nations explain how the U.S. government had broken every treaty they had ever signed. And then they closed by explaining the murdered and missing indigenous movement, indigenous women and children movement. Right now it's the people's movement, and asking people to get involved. And basically, our indigenous peoples are being killed, raped, kidnapped, pulled into human trafficking at an unbelievable rate and at an unconscionable proportion compared to other groups. So at this event where they were closing down, when they closed the ceremony, what they did was they told us how appreciative that they were that we were all there and that we showed up to support them and to learn about all these different issues. But what they did at the end really ripped me up. I mean, they implored us to go home and make a difference in whatever means necessary. I could not help but feel like the universe was telling me that I needed to do something. I'd already been thinking about jumping away from the game industry, but that sealed it. So with the help of a clever therapist, I decided to quit the game industry. My wife and I decided to sell the house, and we decided to start Radical Empathy to raise awareness of this. And I needed to figure out how to use my video game development and interests to make my intent to change the world for the better. So what I discovered later was that I have a personal superpower of radical empathy. In simple terms, I just want to be a good guy. I've had many influences in my life, positive and negative, and just as some are evil by nature, some people are just that way. I'm just the opposite. The net sum of my wisdom has always been clear. You should trust love. I am deeply motivated and concerned for other humans. I've devoted my life to doing the best to prove that my big feelings and my behavior can empower others to trust love. Our company, our philosophy, and our products all attempt to make that more true. I was inspired by the term radical empathy because it represents for me the goal to care for others. To comfort and soothe others takes a huge radical effort to be kind to others and make all lives better by choice, empathy. So my wife and I, we sold our house, we started a nonprofit, and we went out to try to figure out what the best way to do this is. And let me tell you a little bit about her. She's been with me every step of the journey, and I really couldn't do it without her support and guidance. In 1989, I was working at the state hospital, and one day a new batch of employees joined our forces. I saw one of them sitting there with their leg over the side of the chair, just chatting away with one of our patients, treating them just like I would want my family member to be treated if they were in an institution. I knew right then that just because of the way she was caring for those patients, that I needed her energy in my life. 10 years later, we were married, and last year we celebrated our 25th anniversary. She's been crucial in every step of the way during this journey with this company. She's amazing at writing grants and doing human relations. She's joined me on every important call and business trip across America, and I really couldn't be any more grateful for her support with building what I would consider our dream of human trafficking prevention. So we're going to talk about what human trafficking is. At its most basic level, it is unfairly profiting from someone else's work, whether it is through labor or sex. Let's see, I guess I was going to say that, the official definition is really complicated in my opinion, but at the core, somebody is taking advantage of your efforts and benefiting from them unfairly. It can look like sex trafficking, labor trafficking, a child soldier, a child bride, and even organ harvesting. And even more than stealing your efforts, it is most often done by using your own feelings against you to hurt you in a profitable way. There are many misconceptions about trafficking. It's not smuggling, kidnapping, sexual assault, or crossing borders. It's only a small percentage of the enormous and ever-expanding problem at hand. During the technological revolution, where everybody's getting cell phones, the tactics used in human trafficking are changing every day and are becoming nuanced in ways that most people can't recognize. Therefore, they fall prey to them long before they understand the gravity of the situation. It is not a white van and a kidnapping. It is someone or a computer convincing your team that she's in love and then using her feelings against her. This topic is extremely complicated and psychologically injurious, dangerous. I can't even tell you how this thing can mess with your mind. And I highly recommend that you dig in at your own pace. So I think if you really want to learn more about human trafficking, pbjlearning.com has a great online course called Human Trafficking Essentials. It's fantastic. It will teach you everything you need to know, and it is free. So I want to tell you a little bit about my journey of how I got here. Then we'll get into some details, and then I'll show you some video. So I got educated about human trafficking by myself, and I decided I was going to make a Google Cardboard VR version of a trafficking game, thinking that that I knew what was going to work. Well, when I took it to my advisors, they said this is horrible. They said that it didn't raise radical empathy for victims, which hey, that's where the term came from. The first time I heard it was when I needed to be doing that, and I realized that was the definition of my life. And so it was at that moment that we threw it straight in the garbage, erased the whole thing, and that's when I took off on a pilgrimage basically to figure out what I do not understand. I didn't even really know exactly what it was that I was looking for. It took me about a year of my life to discover that in human trafficking prevention education classes, the thing that is the hardest to teach and the thing that doesn't get taught to most of the people is this concept of these invisible chains of manipulation. This is where somebody has psychologically manipulated you and tricked you into basically being under a spell of some sort, or being tricked into, or being coerced into doing labor for their commercial benefit. So I had to figure out what was not being taught, and then how is it that really should be taught. So this core issue is so misunderstood, like for law enforcement, legislature, you name it, that if you don't get it, you don't really understand what this issue is, how the psychological manipulation works, you're going to think that victims should just leave their pimp or just quit being labor trafficked, you know, find another job. It turns out that there really is not an effective way to teach about this at scale. And by at scale, I mean in every school. I mean in every job that has their potential employees being put in situations, hospitals, hotels, I mean, you name it. But the best way to really teach this very complicated psychological topic and concept is through active role playing. And that requires skilled people that are able to answer questions at light speed correctly for every individual learner, no matter what background they're from, no matter whether they believe this is a real topic or they're an expert in it. It's time consuming. It's very, very expensive. And you're at the mercy of, did everybody show up? Were they in the right mood? Do they know everything to actually do that? And usually the thing is that to have a trainer do this, you need somebody that's have lived experience. So training other people is actually also very traumatic for these trainers, because these trainers are trauma survivors and they're talking all day long about their trauma. The thing is that real life experience is so important to learning this material. The question is, how are you going to do it? So the survivors are the best people to provide the training. People with lived experience are the ones that can actually answer this stuff. But there's not enough of them. There's just not. And you're never going to get them to be able to do this stuff at scale. So the personal questions that get asked at these trainings, and we speak to a lot of trainers, it's like they're constantly having to be traumatized so they can get the point across. So while experiential education, the role-playing stuff, is the best education, it poses a problem. We can't expect to get a survivor in front of every person in the world. We can't expect survivors to teach. We can't demand it, because it'd be unfair to their health and the health of the student and ultimately the education. So honestly, it was really like VR was just created for me to deliver this complex message. So using our program, we can have a consistent, let's see. Oh, I haven't gone that far yet. Sorry. Using this program, we can have a consistent and measurable response to our training. We can constantly tweak and conform our message or change our message to teach complex ideas. But even better, we can teach subtle ideas like emotions. VR is good at this because it is a multi-dimensional and multimodal comprehension tool. So we have sight, sound, immersion, and other things. But it's those modalities are cumulative, and that means that there's more separate ways that your brain is actually collecting data, and it adds up to a better result. The training kind of registers as more of a memory than a slideshow presentation. So let's see. I'll tell you a little bit more. So after we did a bunch of research on the invisible chains, we did an HTC Vive version, and then ultimately an Oculus Quest version. You're going to find out more about this later. But hey, everybody wants to just see the dang thing, so let's just go right ahead and crank it up. So I'm going to play a video that was done by our local PBS station. It's about 4.5 minutes, and I think it'll cover everything.
You are playing first person. Learn as much as you can.
Virtual reality has the ability to make people care. Your eyes are completely covered, your ears are completely there. You're in more of a state, if you will, to be able to totally focus on what you're encountering. Some people say it's an incredibly impactful experience learning about human trafficking. You get all the furnishings, you have to put it into the room and make it look interesting and create a little scene. My name is Billy Joe Cain. I'm the president of Radical Empathy Education Foundation. we started the nonprofit to essentially educate people about human trafficking as well as sex trafficking. A couple of years ago, my wife and I found out that our kids were actually being groomed by a sex predator. That blew our minds. What we found was our friends didn't really understand anything about trafficking. They didn't understand anything about grooming. And as I researched the materials that were out there, I found that there's very little material that's easy to access. And I just started working in virtual reality, and virtual reality has the ability to make people care. So I figured, let's combine everything together and build a product that educates people, but leaves people with a memory of how this affects human beings from the inside out.
Virtual reality can create these very rich, vivid experiences that can influence people's behavior and help them remember things in a very profound way. It's really important for us to understand how these really embodied experiences can affect people's behaviors, and thinking about how we can leverage it in a positive way.
So when you actually peer out the window, you see the city out there. Trapped, a VR detective story, has been designed in 3 acts. So what we've created so far is the first act. So when players start, they hear a little bit about Lisa, our victim's story, where she came from, the city that she comes from. And what you do is you go through her home, you look at objects, and as you encounter those objects, she tells you how that affected her. So for instance, she looks at lipstick, and while she was 13 when she was started being trafficked, when she looks at lipstick, she thought originally this is going to make me look glamorous and older, and now she's totally confused about how putting makeup on makes her feel. And I think that interaction with these objects that combines with Polaris Project's signs of trafficking, it really leaves an impact far deeper than just a paper list of these signals to look for.
My first reaction was shock. But I think that's really what we're going for, to let people realize how bad the problem is. So they call VR the ultimate empathy machine. It's shown that experiential learning, living in someone's shoes, increases learning, retention, empathy, which is the biggest part of what we're trying to do.
How much is there emotional trigger in this? We try to make it non-triggering.
Well, there's a lot of research that has shown that, particularly with other characters or people in virtual reality, we treat them as if they're actual people, how we would interact with people in the physical world. So we keep this similar interpersonal distance. Eye contact is extremely strong in virtual reality, and people will feel that experience as similar as if they were in the physical world. So it's finding that balance between feeling like you're there, but not so overwhelmed that you want to shut down.
I forgot I was in there. I was like, oh wait.
This topic, while it's really difficult, there's a lot of people that are very interested in it, and they want to get this information to kids. We know this is a vital tool, and we want to be part of that solution.
We are so honored that PBS did that piece on us. I cannot even tell you, but I hope that kind of gave a kind of an overview of what's going on and showed you a little bit about the product itself to give you an idea what it is that's going on with it. So let me. Okay, so while so I want to talk to you about what was the next step, or actually what was the real first step once we had decided that we were going to do this. It was like, all right, so we have to figure out how we're going to educate people about human trafficking. What in the world are we going to do? It turns out that there is a very close-knit community of people that are fighting human trafficking, and everybody doesn't just get to walk into the door of all these places. While I did get some local help in Austin through some friends, I was really having trouble getting some of these groups to trust me. The more I explained what I was trying to accomplish, the more people kept asking, are you trying to make money off of people that are being human trafficked? And I was like, no, I'm trying to educate people. That's really my goal here. But it took a long time to get people to trust me. I mean, it really took me about 3 months. So after discussion and with group after group, I was finally able to get a hold of some people that were in Portland that were absolutely fantastic, and they helped me get started with this. Let me make sure I have there's some documentation that looks like it might have gotten deleted, but I want to go ahead and just, you know what? I forgot that I wrote it all out really long-handed, so sorry. I don't normally put long things in bullets. So what I did for 6 months was to try to get into the community of people that were actually working on this. The first thing I did was I watched a lot of movies, I read books, I took classes, I went to seminars. local conferences, tried to track what are these things, what are the learning objectives that people need to learn from all this stuff. Because I basically needed to prove that I had some credentials and credibility and I cared about this topic. It took me about 3 months to get into a small group of warriors that were basically in Portland. So they had a giant coalition that was there. I got really lucky that Natalie Weaver was open to the idea of having me come out there, and I talked to her and told her what I was trying to accomplish, and she connected me with a ton of people. So at that point, the door was open, and I got a chance to go travel all over the USA to learn about trafficking. So, you know, meeting people at conferences, going around and going to these groups in person, you know, doing interviews with them. This was before everybody wanted to do Zoom, and I'm still building these relationships. My wife and I drove everywhere. You can't even imagine how many nights we slept in the back of that SUV, called people, you get it. Then I also was working with a number of people that were the kind of the scientific community of virtual reality, trying to make sure, you know, how do you use VR? What is it good for? How do you embed learning objectives? I started working with, you know, training instructors to teach me how to actually accomplish that. So the first thing that I really wanted to do was figure out how in the world does a regular person use virtual reality? The question was, when somebody puts a headset on, you give them controllers, what is going to happen? And it turns out that it's pretty much a disaster. People cannot figure out what is going on. They're like, I'm in a 3D world, stuff's happening. I've got controllers here and buttons. There's a million buttons. What am I supposed to do? So kind of had a little bit of a reality slap right there, because although I wanted to have people walk around and grab things and use things and touch them, it turns out what happens is people get a controller and then they get a hold of something, they pick it up, and then they throw it. And you're like, I don't want people throwing stuff in my app. So we had to figure out how much we're going to let people interact with it. So at that time, after I'd gone through and I'd met everybody, really the trick was I figured out that there's two things I need to do. One is I have to figure out how to make human trafficking understandable in 15 minutes, which is not a lot of time. And then we have to teach people psychological, you know, manipulation. And then we have to figure out how to make somebody comfortable in virtual reality instantly so that they're able to accept this enormous, difficult topic while they're actually, you know, utilizing this whole brand new interface. So let's see. Yeah, people want to walk around and they want to touch things, and then they hold controllers and then they think that they're going to set them down, and then they drop the controllers on them. There's so many things that just went wrong. I can't even tell you. So what I wanted to try to figure out about how I was going to explain trafficking. So I went around and I figured out that the thing was that you can teach a lot of facts about trafficking, like you can take notes on facts. But the thing was that when you said that this is happening because of psychological manipulation, it turns out that that is where people's brains just do not work. People do not understand what coercion is. They can't believe this could possibly happen to their children. They don't understand how somebody could be extorted. They don't seem to understand blackmail. And there are people that just say, this would never happen to my kid, and that's it. So you really have to do this stuff through role playing. You know, when I say on here, there's stand and deliver training, but basically a teacher standing in front of a room of 30 kids, you're not getting that one-on-one instant question and answer thing that really brings you to true understanding of this incredibly complicated psychological trauma. So I really embraced my superpower of radical empathy to really try to figure out what are those ideas and how I'm going to connect to people about this psychological manipulation. So let me talk a little bit about how gamers, they love VR, but regular people don't understand what the heck is going on with it. It's a completely new paradigm because you're literally in a world. You're not looking at a flat television screen or a flat, you know, cell phone. So everything just had to be simplified. So one of the things that we did was we simplified it down so that you didn't even have or need controllers to do anything. You were just going to look at something, and by putting the dot in front of you where your eyes go, putting that dot on something and holding that dot still will actually select that item. That there's tons of research as to why that works, why it helps people. But basically, I knew that people love to look at things, and so to let them do that really made a big difference. And then movement was also a big question. How are you going to have somebody inside of a in? Oh, I don't know what's going on with your phone. Sorry. What winds up happening is people need to move. And so we decided to use that same select and the select interface to let people teleport. So you just look at it and it takes you there. So this is what it looks like when we have multiple people being trained in one area. We can have dozens of headsets and dozens of people being trained. It's absolutely perfect for kids, professionals, you name it. And this is what they're looking at. When we're at a conference, we literally just put a headset on somebody and they're able to go from I've never used VR before to the complete 20-minute playthrough of the whole thing. And that took quite a bit of work. We started off on the HTC Vive where we had to watch them through a monitor. Then we did, and then after we would watch them through through those monitors, we would be able to tell them what to do. So we needed to create a whole new movement interface. We had to create a whole new hint system and things like that. But we got it to work. So we're still going to be getting to talking about the learning objectives and everything. So to write the script for the experience, I knew that I needed to take people through an emotional journey. One of the things that's really important when you start in VR is to give somebody a really cool moment so they can actually see something that's cool. So we start off where somebody is outside in the suburbs, and then we take them into an enclosed condo, and that sort of changes the emotion. But the real trick here was trying to figure out how we're going to explain the psychological manipulation. So you'll see in here on this little chart, if you can zoom in, basically what we do is we found out that this control over somebody else, like having control over their actions or their possessions, was a massive thing. So if you're not free to leave or come and go as you wish, if you're not in control of your own money, you don't have a bank account, if you're not in control of your own identification documents, if you're not able to speak for yourself. So I took a list of all of the red flags, vulnerabilities, risk factors from all of the nonprofits that are out there fighting human trafficking. I force ranked them into groups, and I said, okay, well, what is it about the person's environment? What is it about their mindset? What is it about their relationship with their trafficker? What is it about this? I organized all of that, and whichever ones that popped up on every list that was out there, I marked that as a primary objective. And so that had to be included in the main plot, and so forth and so on. So if there was something that was a little more esoteric, it might be buried deeper into the interactive stuff. You might not notice it. One of the things that was really important that we found was that people don't seem to understand that this is happening in America. And given that that's the issue, everything about this experience had to be happening in America. So it's an American suburb with American stop signs, American school buses, American ice cream trucks outside. Everything is in English. She talks about high school. So when somebody finishes this experience, instead of, you were in a classroom and somebody that was trying to teach 30 people said, this is happening in America, you are being constantly reminded that this is happening in America because it's an American in an American city, an American suburb with an American computer. Everything is all English, talking about an American high school. So it's pounded into your head. So that's the way that we did all of our primary objectives. We made sure that a user was going to encounter that. And the more important it was, the more often they would encounter it. In the link that I sent in the chat, if you look at the article about the Powerful VR Experience for Youth and Counselors, you will find that there's a link to the complete playthrough and the script that you can look at as well, so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. But when we got finished with our first 12 months, I had written the script out. I'd incorporated all of the learning objectives from the major places, and then it was working on the HTC Vive, and so we still didn't have a very good user interface as far as how to move or how to give hints. So we were literally watching them on a monitor. So as they would use the experience, we would say, turn left, go over there, try the lipstick, go into the bathroom. So we needed to be able to scale this. So we had 70 people in a room using it at the same time. And there's no way I can manage 70 people and tell them to have monitors and stuff. So we moved over to what's called the Oculus Quest, which is a much more affordable headset, smaller, easier to use, and we added this thing I call Tinkerbell, and so we'll show you a little bit of that in just a minute. Yeah, this thing used to take a 10 by 10 room to be able to make this thing happen. It took me 30 minutes to set the thing up. So we start off in a little room, and this is sort of how we get people to understand this. Put the red dot on the yellow cube again, and the little yeah, here we go. Sorry, everybody. Tech failure. So your users never see this. This is just a setup so I can explain start to finish. But the very first thing that happens is users are dropped into a room with nothing in it except a little yellow cube, and their idea is to take the red
Look at your
dot,
selection and then hold until the circle completes.
and if you notice the little yellow sparkly,
Launching Trapped, a VR
those yellow
detective
sparklies
story.
are Tinkerbell reminding you, hey, there's something to do, so go ahead and look at it. This is what it looks like when we get our first experience in Trapped. You're outside. It's the suburbs. You can hear
Freedom.
the in the distance.
I remember what it feels like. Being outside and just playing in the yard was so cool. Having a whole day to myself was something I used to expect. Now I can't even imagine it happening again.
So the idea here is we're giving people a look at what it feels like to be in VR. We're not hitting them with any of the difficult topic. We're building a little tension by having the police in the background. You're like, ooh, I wonder what that's all about. So you're looking around and you're seeing this stuff. There's an American stop sign in the road. That's a movement circle on the ground that somebody will understand. That right there is actually Lisa's window. So you're going to be going into that bedroom, looking back out into the street a little bit later. But this is...
Turn until you see the marker and then look directly toward it.
Yep. So we try to remind people what to do, and that's how you move.
Sometimes Mr. Cruz, he lives up at the corner. He would take a group of us biking up the hill to watch the planes take off and leave the airport. I used to create stories and imagine about where they all were going.
But I want to go through the whole thing for you guys because you can do it yourself. But this kind of shows you how we had to simplify the interface. And now somebody's already not just practiced looking at things, but also moving. So when they get into the next scenario, the next room, they're actually going to know how to make that work themselves. And so they don't have to be reminded. And there's Tinkerbell telling us what to do next, and then we're selecting. All right.
Our neighborhood.
Go ahead and move on to the next thing. So this was part of my experience is that I really needed to create an emotional journey for these new users. So somebody has never used VR before. They needed a safe little, here's how you use VR area, nothing else overwhelming in it. And then it opens with the big wow moment where, oh my gosh, I'm outside. I've never seen anything like this before. And then we put them back into, and then we move into a condo where it's more enclosed feeling. There's a ceiling that's kind of feels a little bit low. There's some uncomfortable sound effects. If you move to one area inside of the room, you can actually hear people yelling and making noise and hitting in the next room. The music is sad. There's darker lighting. It's nighttime. It's raining outside, and you can hear the rain. So it's really it's pretty depressing, and it's claustrophobic, and it's meant to be that way. And we did it as a juxtaposition from, hey, everything I used to be free, and when I was a kid, or when I was last year, basically. Everything's free and open, and now I'm enclosed in this area, and I'm being controlled. So we're working on that emotional journey. Again, VR, the Vive, the thing that we had, too expensive, too bulky. We moved over to Oculus Quest so we can serve a whole bunch of people at the same time. We added a whole new movement system, added the Tinkerbell hint system, which I covered all that stuff. So I don't know why. There we go. Yeah, so we covered all that stuff already. I'm so excited. I already jumped ahead through the slides, for crying out loud. So let's see. So let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah. So we are also looking into the future to create follow-up products. And one of the things that we're doing right now is we're actually building a labor trafficking simulation. So Trapped is all about sex trafficking and psychological manipulation and grooming, and how this person used love bombing and coercion to trick her. In the labor trafficking, we explain how somebody from another country will borrow thousands or over $10,000 to get to America, to get a job, to feel like they're going to be somewhere, and be able to send money back to their family. But these employers are lying to them many times, and they get to that new country and find out that, oh, wait, I thought the job was only 40 hours. They're like, yeah, we're going to be working 80 to 120. You thought you were only going to be taking care of one house, but you're actually going to be taking care of a fleet of hotels. It's really insane how people get away with this, and you won't really understand it until you try tricks. an American Visa story in VR. It'll be coming out this year. I'm really excited about it. And let's see, you can imagine that this thing needs to be translated in every language. We need to have new topics. We need new learning objectives because, you know, we're doing a broad-based education with this, which is basically the general public, but we really need to do a version for law enforcement so they know what laws these people are actually breaking. There's so many related laws and situations that need to be covered. We need to think about new cultures. We need to generate new locations. We're currently working with 2 Indian tribes, Native American groups. They're the Puyallup Indian tribe of Washington is absolutely fantastic, and we're working on a grant with them to actually create a culturally relevant and adaptation of this that matches what their needs are. And that is where I'm going to be in just 3 months of intense discussions with those groups to understand what it is, what are their learning objectives that they need to have fulfilled. Every nation is different. Their culture is different, their history is different, their backstory is different, their religions are different, the way they deal with guilt or shame or family or relationships are different. It is something that cannot be emphasized enough that I'm going to be having to learn all these different cultures backwards and forwards, and then figure out what needs to be put inside of these experiences. And even within these groups, if I have if I'm working with the Puyallup tribe and I need to create a version for somebody that has a gay kid in it, how is their culture reactive to that? You know, what is their acceptance level? Maybe different than other tribes and nations. It's really fascinating. Just the way that they deal with guilt, for example. If you do something that is, I'm not their tribe in particular, but in certain tribes, if you do something, you can essentially kind of get everybody in your family, like, not what do you want to call them? Basically, just become shamed, and that shame of something that happens to you gets on them, and then they feel like their family is shamed, and so they would feel like trafficking, or at least the allegations of trafficking, could actually have larger ramifications. So it's like you have to be super careful with this. In fact, we were having a conversation with one of our tribal leaders, and they were explaining that even a husband and wife, if they are from different tribes, we would want to have specific training for the husband and specific training for the wife. So I'm like, the amount of customization that's needed to really get this psychological manipulation and the trickery and understanding how to integrate with people's cultures is so far beyond my belief right now that I see that we have a mountain to climb, and I'm ready to climb it. So I'm going to say that I'm done and happy to answer questions, or I will just keep talking, because this is literally the thing that I spend all of my life on, and I'm absolutely ecstatic about having the opportunity to talk about it. So.
Okay, Billy Joe, there's a couple questions in the Q&A, and then we'll open it up for others who may want to. But there's one from Bernardo. Has a victim realized they've been trafficked while playing the game?
Wow, that is a great question. So let me rephrase that. Has anyone ever gone through this experience, played the game, and realized that they had been trafficked? Yes, that it's no question. My wife is sitting here with me right now, and she is just emphatically nodding her head. I have a friend that I've known for over a decade, and she came over one day and she said, "Billy, I woke up. That's exactly what happened. Bah, bah, bah." I don't know how that sting happened. Was that on your end or my end? Anyway, it was perfect. I heard a.
Was that you, Steve? No. Steve.
I'm going to guess by the reaction that was our friend from Florida.
I love it. Okay, more like that. Can I hook up Reef Cares Donate to that sound sing, and so I can get like an extra Pavlovian reaction for that? No, I'm just kidding. Let's see. So I was actually I was planning on this one day to go to the Austin state capitol, the Texas state capitol in Austin, and educate one of the teams of one of the senators that was there. They had asked me to go give a 45-minute talk on trafficking. Well, my friend shows up at the house and she says, I woke up this morning and I realized I'm supposed to volunteer for you. So I got dressed up and let's go. And I'm like, what are you talking about? How did you know? She says, something told me that I was supposed to be here. I'm like, all right, great. So I took her with me. And so I did my 45 minutes, explanation of what trafficking was. She didn't say anything. Normally she's really, really talkative. And then she had used the VR, and she had, after she had been in that meeting, she walked out and she was actually kind of shaking. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What's going on? It's not cold in here. Are you all right? And she says, I just realized that my mother trafficked me. And I'm like, what? And she says, yeah, I realized that my mother, because of our religious beliefs, I know, guys, this topic is horrible, but, I'm sorry. So she said that she had been raped by a man when she was a minor. And so then she was spoiled. And so her mom gave her to the man that raped her. And then she had to perform for him labor and sex whenever she wanted anything. And she thought that was normal. And she didn't realize it was not normal until she had been through our trainings. Then a couple of years later, actually, she came to us and she said, I've been doing a lot more research on trafficking and also on my family. And she realized that she was a third generation trafficking victim. Similar manner for mom and grandma. And it's really something. We have people that go through our VR experience at shows, and they realize that they are creating vulnerabilities in their children because they're working too many hours. They're not spending enough time with their kids. They're not talking to them. They don't know their kids' friends' names. They just buy their kids a cell phone and let them use all the social media that they want. But when the parents get finished with this experience, they're like, I need to rededicate myself to being a parent to my child. Because they started to see that, wow, kids meeting strangers on video games and on social media could lead to something like this. My kid could get tricked. The kid could get coerced by somebody. The thing is that a lot of people think they're just giving their kids access to the internet. Oh, yeah, it's okay. Let them have a phone. What you're doing is the exact opposite. You are giving the internet access to your kids because almost everything has a way to talk to you. SMS messages on your phone, video games. I mean, you name it, it's out there. So, yes, it has happened.
Right. Yeah, and you can see how with a lot of different cultures, religions, that it could very easily be grooming. All right, so let's go different direction.
One more thing about that, Monica, if you don't mind, before we're done. What I want to share with you is that there was an 82-year-old man who takes the headset off. And he looks me right in the eye and he says, I was molested by my uncle when I was 12 years old. And I was like, I am honored you would share that with me. And he says, yeah, I've never told anybody. He says, I just realized that this has affected my entire life and I need to go see a specialist.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. Just abuse, psychological abuse is just, it's so rampant, it's everywhere. Okay, so thank you for asking that question and letting me expand upon that. I appreciate that.
Okay, so a couple questions. One from Leah: are you able to train people in the hospitality and airline industries?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We this training, this basic, I don't want to say basic, but this fundamental training of explaining to people how the psychological coercion happens, and it gets people to understand that you could literally see someone that looks like they're in a relationship, and to every other person looking at them, it would seem like they were in a relationship. And sometimes even the people that are in this actually don't even realize because they've been brainwashed by that person. Just the ability for people to understand the psychological brainwashing, manipulation, coercion is applicable across all industries. We have bankers that take this training, so they're normally they're getting like financial training. So like, how do I look and see if somebody's being labor trafficked through a spreadsheet? So our licensees actually go there and they put the VR on their headset or on their heads, and they're like, I had no idea people could get tricked into this. And you're like, that's all we've told you for years. And they're like, I just didn't get it. So it's
Right.
like, it gets you to understand the psychological trickery. The thing was that, and I probably should have talked about this in the talk extensively, but I never can know when to shut up. But what I found out was that the real trick about using the empathy and putting you in her shoes. So like if you're looking at makeup in this thing, right? So as a victim, this girl has to put on makeup to make herself look older or younger. And so when you see the makeup and she tells you the story about how I used to think makeup would make me look pretty and glamorous and all this stuff, but I realized that really what I'm doing is painting myself up to be, abused by men. It's like people's brains just don't understand it until they're in that position. People call it the first person view of trafficking.
That's good. Alex wants to know, Alex is very interested in and she's a question, if she has an Oculus at home, can you find and purchase the game?
It is not for sale on the general market, and I'll tell you why. This thing really requires someone that knows what they're doing to be there in case there is an outcry or in case someone basically has a breakdown. So what we want to do is I am more than happy if she has an Oculus that she knows how to side load, which I'm sure she can figure out in no time at all. And these are what the headsets look like. These are Oculus Quests. I will send her an APK and she can take a look at it. And all I would ask is to have her take it to maybe a PTA meeting or maybe a church or a community group or a school and see if they would like to have us get them a license so they can be using it constantly. We need people like her, like you, to spread the word that we exist, because we are literally the best kept secret in human trafficking prevention education. And we're doing everything we can to make it better. We have this thing right here, this box, that is our Appleseed box that we will send out to any group that is interested. So just contact me. I will send you a box. The box comes with a headset and all the instructions that you'll need to know how to use it. I'll set it up over Zoom with you so you understand how to use it. Literally, this was the thing that we were doing while we were driving around the country, basically taking headsets to people. So now we send them out in a box, and we're lucky enough with enough donations that have come in that we're able to have a few headsets. Like I got some over here that are all getting set up to do stuff. But glad to work with her. Have her contact me, billy@reefcares.org.
All right. And so I'm going to ask you a question from a different perspective. So when we talk about like game-based learning, gamification, we get pushback because oftentimes the analogy or the connection that's made is that if we're talking about fun and games, they're playing, they're not working. So I imagine for you, it's like, let's go to the total other side of that. You want to talk about sex with our high school kids? Won't that have them think about? I mean, that doesn't happen in our community. I mean, what is the pushback?
We hear everything you can imagine. We hear it. I mean, I live in Texas, and in Texas, we generally don't have any sex education training because that is considered a community standard. And so the question is, how do you teach anybody about human trafficking if you don't talk about sex? I've actually had a meeting before with a number of teachers that were interested in using our app. And I was like, they were like, yeah, but can't we change some of these words in here? I mean, it says rape. And I'm like, that's a legal term. That's not a slang term. That's an actual legal term that if that's happening to someone, they need to report that to the police. I'm like, you really want me to take that out? And they're like, well, I guess maybe, I don't know. Well, what about this? Can you take the condoms out? I'm like, that is the whole way that makes people start talking about actual sex and the risks of sex and what happens if somebody gets pregnant and STDs and all that. And they're just like, So I went through and we looked at sanitizing the script, and they basically wanted to take the sex part out of sex trafficking. So I was like, it's really risky. However, the children, the students want to know this so much that in 2018, the Texas Association of Student Councils, actually, the kids stood up and said, we want to learn about human trafficking this year. The adults and teachers and all the people that were behind the scenes said, no, we don't want to do that. So we're not going to do it. And then the kids revolted. They got the topic for the year, and then they invited us to go there. So we were so fortunate to be able to be at that conference. I knew there was going to be so many kids. There was 4,000 people out of, no, my apologies. There were 4,000 people that came to the conference, and I did a survey and got about 300 responses, and I found out that 94% of the people that responded to my poll there said they got no training whatsoever during the entire year, even though this was their topic. They were unable to convince people at the schools. And we're talking about, these are the kids that had ran for student council, won student council, and bothered to go to this annual conference. And they were saying, we tried all year, we couldn't do it. So it's an adult problem.
Yeah. Well, it absolutely is an adult problem, right? From all angles.
Yeah, adults don't want to teach this about,
Yeah.
they don't want to teach things to children, and the
Yeah.
children are living in a world where every day they're getting messages on their cell phone from strangers, and many children can tell you, I think it's like 50 or 70%, the numbers are outrageous. They'll tell you that there is an adult that's trying to get me to send them a nude, asking me for nudes. They know, these children, it's nuts what's going on, and this stuff is about to get way worse. It's already worse than anybody knows, because we have automated chatbots, we've got automated systems, AI, large language learning models. We can scrape people's social media. I can scrape your parents' social media. I can get an audio file of you, and I can create a cloned voice where it sounds like you're being blackmailed. I can make it sound like you've been kidnapped, and I can call your parents with your voice. It's messed up. And this stuff is all happening with computer programs. This isn't even like some weirdo doing this stuff. They are fishing in PHISH and FISH. They are fishing in a huge pool, because now almost everyone has a cell phone, and they don't even know what they're doing, and they don't know how risky it is. You know, this is an epidemic. And let me tell you one more thing, and I apologize for just grabbing that microphone and never letting it go. But on this particular case, this is super important. What is happening with kids that are being extorted and blackmailed and coerced is happening on cell phones. Somebody will get a photo of that child, or they'll create a deep fake, and they will trick that kid into giving them money or doing things for them, to the point where it's called sextortion, basically. Well, that's one of the aspects of it. But what's happening is children are committing suicide because they don't know how to get out of this stuff. It is absolutely horrendous. One of the groups that we work with, the Let's Do It for James Foundation, the foundation was started by a couple whose son, they had come back off of a vacation. The kid went in his room, got on his computer, was on social media. Parents went to sleep. Well, it turned out that this guy got catfished by a professional predator who convinced him to share a nude after they shared one with him. And then they extorted him for all the money that he had. And when he found out that he didn't have any other resources and that those people were going to expose him, he just killed himself.
Yeah.
This stuff is very real. And then you have all of the adults and retirees and people that have money in their bank accounts that are being tricked out of their bank account numbers through spam and phishing mails. This stuff where people are trying to take advantage of you through computers and computer-aided resources, it's out of control.
Yeah.
These predators are very good at their job.
Yeah.
They make a
They're
lot
good.
of money.
Yeah. So it's evident that the training needs to happen. And so, again, I know that having you present here, it's the network has a lot of connections and ideas of how things could happen. So stay connected with Billy Joe. Billy Joe, stay connected with us. Thank you for bringing this topic. I know it's a little heavy right here at the end of the conference, but again, it's just showing that the power of training, the power of getting information out there, using the VR, realizing that this is an area where making it that interactive and immersive can have a hugely positive impact.
Games can save lives.
Yeah.
Games
So
can
thank
save
you
lives.
for that. Appreciate you being here with us, Billy
Thank you
Joe.
so much.
Appreciate you very much. Thank you.